My name is Mark O'Keefe. I'm executive editor of the Herald-Standard. I want to welcome you to the editorial board meeting with candidates for the Uniontown Area School Board. We have 6 candidates running in the May 21st primary for 4 seats on the Uniontown School Board. The candidates are incumbents Bill Gerke, Bill Rittenhouse Jr., Philip Holt, and Lloyd Williams, and challengers Terry Dawson and Don Regola. All have cross-filed. And with us today are candidates Bill Rittenhouse and Bill Gerke. We want to thank the candidates for agreeing to meet with us. Members of the editorial board present today are Carla DiStefano, who's our features editor. Candidates will have 3 minutes to give opening and closing statements and 3 minutes to answer questions. Members of the board may ask follow-up questions, and the candidates will have 3 minutes to answer those questions as well. So without We'll get going here. We'll give you 3 minutes for opening, and we'll start with Mr. Gerke, since G starts before R. See, I got that down.
Thank you, Mr. O'Keefe, and I want to thank the Herald-Standard and the editorial board for having me here this afternoon. My name is Thomas Bill Gerke. I've lived in Uniontown all of my life. Graduated from Uniontown High School in 1974. Graduated of Duquesne University in 1978. Reside here in the city of Uniontown with my wife, Kathy. Until the year 2006, I ran Gerke's Exxon across from Uniontown High School. At that time, I retired. And today, I have a small rental business and do a lot of community service. I'm seeking my second term as school board director here at the Uniontown Area School District. I've served the past, well, it'll be 3.5 years that I've served. It'll be 4 whenever my term's up on the Personnel and Finance Committee. And I'm very proud and honored to be able to hold that position. In the community, I'm a member of Central Christian Church. Presently, I'm president of the congregation at our church. I was past president of the Stewardship and Finance Committee at Central Christian Church, and I serve on the committee now. Lifelong deacon and trustee at the church also. I look forward to going over some of the questions and answers here today, and I guess that's about all I have to say right now about myself.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bill?
Again, I thank the Mark and your staff for the chance to come down and share some ideas and answer your questions. I, like Bill, I'm a lifetime resident of this area. I graduated from Uniontown High School. I went to Penn State University and graduated in 1974. I was in the banking business for a number of years out of the area, and I came back to the area in 1980 to work for my father in the insurance business. And when I came home, my dad told me one thing. He said, when you're in a community like this, it's imperative that you give your time, your talents, and your money to help the community, do what you can, and to pay the community back for allowing you to be in business in such a great place. I had an opportunity, and I thought there was a need for 16 years ago, for business people to be in the school board. And I stepped forward and ran, and I'm finishing up my 4th term, and I'm extremely proud of what we have accomplished on the board, and feel that we just can keep those successes coming. And initially, I wasn't going to run for another term, but I really enjoy doing what we're doing. I think we're making a big difference, and because of that, I've decided to run for another term, and that's why I'm sitting right here to answer any questions you may have.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll start out with the first question. The Uniontown Area School District failed to meet goals needed to make adequate yearly progress, otherwise known as AYP, on the Pennsylvania System of School Assessment, PSSA, testing for 2012, putting the district on a warning notice. The district will have to meet AYP for 2 consecutive years to move back on track and meet all measures by 2014. Are you concerned about the failure of students to reach these goals, and what should be done to put the district back on track? We'll start with Bill.
When you hear that a school doesn't make AYP, or a school district doesn't make AYP. Sometimes those figures are a tad misleading, and I'll tell you why. When they go to a school and they test that school, the school in and of itself can make AYP. But if there is a subgroup in that school, be it socioeconomic or whatever subgroup it may be, as defined by the Department of Education, if in fact that's the case, then the entire school doesn't make AYP. And over the past few years, our district has been victim to that, for example, the high school makes AYP, but maybe a group in the high school does not, as defined by the Department of Education. So what we have done as best I think as possible as a district is try to define where we're weak and implement programs for that. And I think really we've done as much as you can do within the confines of what you can do it in, as far as the core subjects that we deal with and the standards that we have to operate in. So does it concern me that we're not making the progress that the state has to make? It does, but every year they raise the bar. You know, when you're dealing with the state, it isn't that you have a set target. It's a moving target. So every year they raise the bar, so it's that much harder to make AYP. So if you look at our scores and some of the progress that we've made, I'm real pleased with that. Do we have some improvement that we can always do? And the answer is yes. But with that said, I will stack our the quality of our teaching staff, the quality of our administrators to any school district in Fayette County. And if you compare Uniontown scores to the same kind of schools in Fayette County that have the same demographics that we have, it's hard to compare us, say, to Fraser, because the demographics are totally different. But if you compare us to schools like us, we have continued over the years to score the highest in Fayette County. So when balanced, I think that we're doing a pretty good job, and that we're always striving to keep doing better.
Well, you mentioned about that the tests that the state is moving, they're tightening the test scores.
They raise the bar
Raise the bar.
each year. So if you make it one year, it doesn't mean you're going to make it the next year. And then when they pepper that with the subgroups as defined by the Department of Education in the school, have to also make AYP. So you can have the entire high school make AYP, but if because of a subgroup they don't make AYP, the entire high school doesn't make AYP. So there's a certain degree of unfairness the way it is, but those are the rules that we have to play by. And you know, we have talked to people that it should be different, and the administrator or our legislators think maybe there's some changes that could be made, and they are starting to make some changes, but they certainly won't affect what we're doing this year. The next is more down the road.
Well, do you feel though that the district will be able to make them? I mean, particularly since they are, we know that they're raising the bar, so to speak.
I think that our school district has done everything possible, from our superintendent down to our principals, to implement programs and to work through professional development with our staff, to be able to make the kind of goals that the state wants us to make. And I feel very confident about that. If you see some of the professional development we have now in reference to math and some of the other courses, we've come a long way with some of the things that we have to deal with. We have some issues that we deal with here in Uniontown, some other districts don't, but we certainly step to the challenge, and I think that with the things we have implemented now, some of the stuff that's down the road, that we should be able to meet the kind of goals that the state is setting for a district like Uniontown.
Okay.
It seems like Bill said almost everything that I wanted to say, but we'll just go back on a few items. Number one, I'd like to say that our administrators, principals, and teachers, I'd match them against anyone in the county, and for for that fact, anywhere in the state. And I know there are some items there that we're lacking on, and I believe that with all the guidance from our administrators and principals, our teachers are stepping up and addressing these issues that need to be addressed. And I'm aware that, you know, it's really sad that the state, they base a lot of our state funding through the PSSA scores, and we teach toward that. But that's just, you know, but our legislators are working toward that. Maybe we can move away from some of that over a period of time, that isn't based on, you know, our funding isn't based all on PSSA scores. You know, in every business, I don't care if it's in the school district, if it's in the insurance business, if it's in the rental business, or whatever business you're in, usually there's 90, 95%, 98% of the people, the employees are excellent. And again, in the school district, I want to reiterate that 99.5% of our teachers are A1. You know, they're top of the line. But sometimes the union, the PSCA ties our hands behind our back. You know, you say we're not teaching. You know, the students aren't getting taught properly, and they come back and say the teachers aren't doing their job. And I would come back and say 99.5% of the teachers are doing their job, and maybe there is a half a percent that isn't doing their job, like in any other industry. And probably at our school, our scores are higher. But what I'm trying to get to is that the PSCA, the union, ties our hands behind the back. I'm not real familiar with the case that happened back in mid-80s that Laurel Highlands had, and they found a teacher that wasn't competent. Now, again, I'm not real familiar with the case, but I can give a few ideas there. And the board and the school district decided that they wanted to remove this particular teacher from the school district. It took them 10 years or 15 years to remove this teacher from teaching because they found him incompetent because of the union, the PSEA, just tying the hands behind the back of the administrators and the school board. But as a whole, yes, it concerns me that our scores aren't up. But yes, I believe that we're starting to work toward getting those scores up. And as Mr. Rittenhouse stated earlier, you know, in the county, besides, you know, they have us going against Fraser and all the other ones, but you take Fraser out of the loop, and Uniontown's right there, if not above the other school districts in our county.
Does it concern you at all that that you do have a lot of parents are looking at these test scores now, particularly maybe parents that when they're maybe looking as far as where they're going to live or whatever, that, you know, our scores are lower than like neighboring counties and that sort of thing. Does that worry you at all, or do you just think that, you know, are you kind of content that, well, at least we're comparable to school districts here in Fayette County?
I would never be content with just saying, well, education's just fine and status quo. I would not be that way. I don't have that opinion. And I believe that our administrator, again, I'll go back to our administrators, our principals, and our teachers are working toward to elevate those test scores and to elevate the type of education that we are giving our students here. Because without the you know, we always talk about educating our children, you know, like we just don't want to educate our students for them to move away. We want them to stay here. And you give them the proper education. There are jobs here. We want to see them stay here. So it'd be a good idea for us to give them the proper education to build our community, because without a good educated student, our community doesn't thrive. And I believe our community is starting to thrive because of the education standards that are starting to grow here.
Well, I think sometimes we have to separate scores on these standardized tests and subgroups into what we're producing at graduation. You know, Mark, if you look at your son and my son and so many other young men and women that have graduated from Uniontown and gone on to be successful professionals in their careers, every year we're graduating people that go to some of the finest colleges in the nation. We have a Vote Tech program out there that if we have some students maybe that college isn't what they want to do and they're focused early in life, that maybe they want to do some trade that's taught out there, they're going out there, and I will stack that school up to any any vocational school that there is. And then you have the group kind of in between that maybe don't want to go to college, maybe don't want to go out to the vo-tech school for whatever reason. And I think the product we're putting out the door at graduation, I will stack them up against any high school, anywhere, anytime. The only difference is that when you're taking these standardized tests, sometimes there are reasons, be it subgroups, be it economic, all these different areas that come into play that sometimes we're not able to score as well as maybe a school in Fox Chapel or Mount Lebanon or Upper St. Clair or some of these schools that maybe don't have some of the challenges that our teachers and administrators have, and God bless them because they really step to the plate and I think do really everything that needs done.
Okay, thank you very much. Carla, you want to ask the second question?
Speaking of the VOTEC, there's a proposal to change the way the Fayette County CTI operates. Under this proposal, students would spend their final 2 years of school exclusively at the CTI. Do you favor this change? And if so, why, or if not, why?
Your turn.
My turn? First, I'd like to say that there has to be something done at the VOTEC to change the way we're doing things now at the VOTEC. Right now, what we're doing, we're busing our children to the VOTEC, and then we're eating lunch, and then we're busing them back to the high school, and there's a lot of downtime there, and we're not getting all the education, they're not being able to utilize all the tools that CTI is there to offer to our children, and we're not able to utilize all the tools that in the high school that we're able to utilize. The 2-year program versus the 2-year program at CTI versus 2 years at the school, that's something that is on the cutting edge. It needs a lot more exploring. I'm not saying I would say to explore that. What we're really trying to do there is give as much education for the time that we have to our students, and we try to do that in an economic manner. There's some pros and cons to all that. I'm in favor of looking at some sort of change at the VOTEC on how we educate our children at the VOTEC and educating them here at our high school. But my opinion on that also is that it's just like whenever I got elected for the school board, the people in the Uniontown School District elected me to make decisions for them on the school board. And in turn, our board elected 3 people to represent us at the VOTEC. And whenever they come back with their ideas, not saying that their ideas are etched in stone, but they're the ones that come back and say, this is what we think, and they come back and tell us the pros and cons to it, and then we send them back to make the decision. But I'm trying to put my decision-making in the hands of the representatives that we give to the VOTEC. They're the ones that are there at the meeting. They're there on the cutting edge of the VOTEC. We're not, and I don't want to say, oh, I know more than you do, because I'm just sitting back and reading in the paper and listening. They're there at the meetings. They're bringing it all back to us. They know all the ins and outs and all of the economic values to it. I'm looking at economic values, of course, but I'm looking at educational values also. They have to work together. It just can't be an economic issue. You say, well, we can save money by, we're not busing them that much. That's all well and good. But if you're not getting the educational value there, those economic values, they're not worth anything. And it all has to work together, because what we're there for is getting the best education for our children at the time and the money that we have to spend on them.
If I could ask a question.
Sure.
You're not completely sold on this plan, and I know there was some discussion about the semester about.
Yes.
What are your feelings on that, having them do it?
I'm not, the reason I'm saying I'm not, I may be sold on all this. I don't have all the information. They haven't brought all the information back to us yet, so I can't be sold on it whenever it's just a partial, it's still in the discussionary phase. And it isn't, we're not there yet. They're still discussing, we're going to do this 2 years, or we're going to do it one semester. at the VOTEC and one semester at the school district. There's a couple issues there that haven't been decided, and I'd like to have a little more discussion on that before making a decision. But I'm sure the representatives that we have from our school district will bring back the right decision for us, and they'll give us all the pros and cons to each of those items.
Okay, Bill.
I agree with everything that Bill said. Sometimes you get into some of these issues, and they really involve a lot of things, a lot of issues having to do with education, and at times you have to lean heavily on the advice of the educators. But that said, when you're elected, you become a steward of the taxpayers' money, and I think that we need to provide the services that the VOTEC has to provide the most effective way as possible. And that effectiveness really splits up into two areas. The first would be economic, because if you can provide those services, and with them being out there all the time or splitting it up without buses running all the time, that's certainly a savings. That said, you have to lean on the educators and say, okay, what is the best way that we feel as educators we can educate these kids, because they get involved in the PSSA, and we have to, you have to keep in mind that we have to keep them right at the edge. And so right now, as Bill said, we're waiting to get all the data so we can discuss that at meetings. We can analyze that. We have the people out there, just as Bill said, that they're at the meetings, and they bring information from out there to us. They disseminate to us, sometimes at school board meetings, other times in writing. And at some point, we'll have to make a final decision when we have all the information.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next question. A number of school district officials are upset across the state with the funding of cyber schools. What changes, if any, would you like to see happen, and overall, do you see cyber schools as being a positive or a negative? We'll start with you, Bill.
So far, I have, with my experience, and I took some interest into to study this some. If you look at most of the students that have gotten involved in cyber school, let me rephrase that. I don't think cyber school has been as successful in Uniontown School District as some people say it is. Number one, up until fairly recently, the only cyber school available, if someone wanted to go to that cyber school, it cost the school district $10,000, $11,000. So if someone decides to go to cyber school, the taxpayers had to spend 10, 11, 12 grand for the tuition and the computers and those type of things. Most times when those people would come back, they didn't make the progress in cyber school as they do when they're actually sitting in our classes. So the cyber school as it traditionally was 4 and 5 years ago, I wasn't satisfied with it. I thought it wasn't a good deal for the taxpayers. And at our school district, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, I think we were spending $120,000 more than that. I forget what the number was, but it would just knock you down when you found out what the taxpayers of Uniontown had to pay for these students who decided, I don't want to go to Uniontown, I'm going to go to cyber school. Since then, there are other options. The IU is beginning to develop and has implemented a cyber school program, and I think at Uniontown we've done a few little things. I don't think it's full time, but there's some other options right now. But I really it was extremely expensive for the taxpayers, and personally I didn't see the success from that. I did have a relative in Waynesburg whose daughter went to cyber school over an issue playing soccer and being involved in a soccer program, and she's a real smart, top of her class kind of a young lady, and she didn't like it. She said it was difficult. it took a lot more focus than it would take if you're in a classroom, and she didn't like it. As soon as she'd get out, she did. So it certainly does get passing marks from me.
Okay.
I have to agree with Bill there again on cyber school. You know, we spend a lot of money on educating a small percentage of our children in the school district. And a lot of times, whenever they come back into the public school, their educational skills aren't as high as if they were sitting there being taught by our teachers. We're spending a lot more money there. And of course, you take the social issue also. You know, you're at home and you're going through these classes without being around the other 20 or 30 children in each classroom. You lose a lot there. I'm not really sold on the cyber school. I know there's funding going to be coming down from the state for cyber school, and the educational system is changing all the time. But at this point in time, I'm not a big proponent of cyber school here in the school district.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome, sir.
You want to say something?
No. Well, I think Uniontown doesn't have its own cyber school. I may have given that opinion. We have played with the idea. That's what I meant when I...
Carla?
In light of the Newtown school shootings, do you think your schools have adequate safety measures in place? Are there any changes you would like to see?
Is that me? Okay. I can't.
Can I say one thing? If you don't mind.
Go ahead, Bill.
And this is, if you can, I don't think that either Bill or I want to talk about how it exists now on the camera. I don't think that would be, we can certainly say what we support, but I don't think it would be safe for us to say, this is the kind of security we have in certain schools. And someone who's a member of your online pulls it up and say, oh, well, that's a, if you understand what I'm saying.
Right. Maybe if you could just talk generally
Yeah,
about...
that's all I think
Okay,
we're looking at.
that's something, the question was kind of worded, hey, what are you doing now? You know,
No,
so
we're not
okay.
looking for specifics, really.
Okay,
We're-
all right.
We're looking more for
Right.
generalities.
I know, Billy, it wasn't my turn.
That's okay.
I apologize.
That's no problem, Bill. Ask the question again, Carla, if you would, please.
Sure. In light of the Newtown school shootings, do you think your schools have adequate safety measures in place? Are there any changes you would like to see?
First thing I'd like to say is, I think there's always room for improvement in safety issues, and I'm sure that our safety directors are looking at that, and we as a board are constantly discussing and thinking of ways that we can make our schools safe without taking up all of our time, security and not education. We have to be secure. I feel there's many ideas that we can elaborate upon, that we can make our schools safer. There's many avenues that we can go down to make our schools safer. Maybe this isn't the place to talk about, or maybe it is, but you know, they talk about guns in the schools. That's a very touchy situation. We have to be very careful. You know, do we arm our security guards? Do we have armed guards at the school? Do we hire new, you know, and it's a economic issue too. I'm not saying that the dollars will override the security. We need to make it the most economical way of securing our system, but we have to be secure. And I'd like to go on record as saying I don't want to see us bringing guns into the school, but again, we need to have our schools secure for everyone. Just we have to be secure for our administrators, our teachers, all of our employees, and utmost for our children.
Would you say that you currently feel pretty good about your security situation?
What I was saying is that there's always room for improvement for our security system, our security program at our schools. No, I'm not happy with that, but you have to keep looking for better ways to secure your schools.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
The first year I was elected to the school board, we made a vote to start a police force. And we got beat up like no tomorrow that we were actually going to waste taxpayers' money with a police force. At that time, we thought it was the right decision, and move forward all these years. I still feel it was the right decision, but times have changed since 15 and a half years ago. Times have changed. We have Officer Garrow over at the high school with his drug dog, and that's about as effective as you're gonna get. That said, Bill and I have sat in a number of meetings where we've discussed that very thing. What do you do? And to this point, we have not, I think, been able to come up with an idea that the board was comfortable with. I think that's fair enough to say, having to do with, which path do you take? I will go as far as saying that the Butler School District has implemented a program which was controversial when they talked about it, but when it was implemented, there was very few people opposed. It's been very smooth in its implementation, and that school district, based on that implementation, probably has as safe a school district to protect their students from something that happened at, was it Newtown?
Yeah.
Probably as safe as exists in southwestern Pennsylvania, and I think that's something we should probably look at. You may have to adjust it a little bit to fit our school district. This school district is 250 square miles, so we have some demographic issues and some just big area issues that some other school districts may not when it comes to dealing with this issue. So I think that, as Bill said, we have a lot more things to talk about, and I think as time goes on, we're going to move forward with this and implement something that the board will be comfortable with, and I think that the public will be comfortable with, and as Bill said, continue to move forward.
Okay, I'll take the next question. State Representative Tim Mahoney has proposed consolidating school administrations in Fayette County with voters electing one school board. Are you in favor of this change? And can you explain if you're in favor of it or why you're against it? So,
I'm always open to changes that I feel are going to produce a better product at a more cost-effective way. Probably about 3 months ago, I had a Harrisburg legislator apologize to me for having not increased our funding. And as Bill knows, we're spending in Uniontown about $14,000 a student to educate our kids. The past few years in our school district, because of a lot of sound financial decisions that I've been involved with, that Bill's been involved with, we have been able to change our financial situation to where we were had a deficit to where this year we had almost a $4.1 million surplus. By doing that, we've been able to escrow money for teacher retirements that's coming. By doing that, we've been able to invest in books. By doing that, we're in the process of implementing, hopefully, a computer system that will be the state-of-the-art in Pennsylvania. That said, at Uniontown, we have been able to keep an administrative staff that is as small as any. I mean, we're the same size as Fraser and have 3 times as many students. We're smaller than Laurel Highlands. We're a lot smaller than Collinsville. Our administrative staff is a lot smaller than Albert Gallatin, and on top of that, our superintendent works for free. So, we have a unique situation in Uniontown whereby I think we're running pretty tight, and I think doing a good job giving the taxpayers a bang for their buck. As you look at a Fayette County consolidated type of a school district, it would be almost a $250 million school district, and I'm not sure that it can be operated as, with my experience on the school board, as thin maybe as some of the plans I saw would. But again, if you get to a situation where you have to start raising taxes to be able to educate our kids, which at Uniontown we don't have to do, then maybe you have to look at some alternative. I'm not saying it's Mr. Mahoney's plan. I will say this: he did something. He came up with a plan. I don't think when you look at all the details, maybe that was the best plan. But at some point down the road, if a certain school district or school districts can operate like we are at Uniontown, maybe you have to make some changes. What they are at this point, I don't know. But maybe some changes would have to be made. At this point, we didn't raise taxes last year. We didn't raise taxes this year. The year before that, we only did it, I think, Bill, correct me if I'm wrong, the index, which is the smallest amount you can. The year before that, I'm not sure we did. And on top of that, we increased to a $4.1 million fund balance. So what that shows you is that if you have a board that's willing to make tough decisions, you have administrators who are willing to do the tough things, you have teachers that are willing maybe to take a few more kids in their classroom than they had the year before and do what they need to do from a standpoint of preparing for the PSSA and the standards and all that you can run a school district without every year saying we have to raise taxes, we have to do this, and I'm, to be honest, proud of that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Talking about Mr. Mahoney's consolidation plan, his plan as a whole was basically to consolidate administration and leave the schools, districts, leave their identity alone. And that might be pretty hard for people to swallow here in Fayette County, maybe even including myself. But there are items that we could save money with, and I don't know what items those are, but some, there's been conversation that we can save money on transportation. We can exchange services between the other school districts, and Bill spoke about us not raising taxes in the last 2 years, and we've held strong on that here at Uniontown. This last year, whenever we were talking about, we have this much money, $39.5 million. So we put what my plan was to the business manager, to the administration was, here's $39.5 million. We put it on the table. Now let's fund this school district in the best way we can, but there's not a dime more. And I'll go on record saying that there won't be a dime more again this year. We're looking at ways to maybe even giving something back to the taxpayers. But there's always ways to save money. But we never want to jeopardize our education. But if there's ways to save money, at one time it was just spend as you go, and it just wasn't at Uniontown. That was everywhere, and then all of a sudden the door closed and said, "Wow, we're in debt this much." 2 years ago, we were a $2 million deficit here at Uniontown, and now, as Bill said, we're at 4.1 fund balance. We're putting money into the retirement plan for the teachers. And we put $50 million here into the city of Uniontown, into the renovation of all three of our city schools, and we haven't raised taxes. It's just that we've just tightened up on some of the loose ends, and people like to be tightened up a little bit. Like just not spend as you go, and it's entertaining that we don't spend the money like we once did in all the school districts. I'm just not saying Uniontown, but we're conservative in what we spend, and we get a bang for our buck. Now back to Mr. Mahoney's plan to consolidate the school districts. As Bill said, Uniontown, I think we're running very efficient. The taxpayers are happy. You walk down the street and people say, you see older people and they're 75, 80 years old and they're having a hard time paying their school taxes. That's just part of living, but hopefully we don't raise those taxes, which I would vote against a tax increase. There's always a way to keep those taxes where they are. That's the hard way of doing things. The easy way is to raise taxes and we can do things, but you cut costs and continue giving the proper education. I think we've run efficient. We've run efficient here at Uniontown, and hopefully maybe some of the other school districts in the county will take notice that how Uniontown, we don't raise taxes, we haven't laid off anyone, and we're still giving the proper education to our students.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Carl, you want to take the next question?
The Fraser School District remains the only school district in Fayette County with an anti-nepotism policy. Would you like to see one in place for the Uniontown Area School District? Can you explain why you're in favor of it or against it?
So,
Okay. Anti-nepotism policy. We had this discussion 4 years ago whenever I first ran for the school district. There's always that discussion going on. My point is on nepotism. If someone comes to apply for a job and they're the most qualified person for that position, needless to say, if they're an administrator's relative, a school board's relative, a teacher's relative, or just someone that just came into town, if they're the most qualified person for that position, I truly believe that that's who should get that job. They shouldn't be discriminated against because of who they're related to, but on the other hand, they shouldn't give they cannot be given special favors because of who they're related to or who they know. It's just, you're the person that's best suited for that job. Let's give that job to that person that's best suited, and just put all those other things to the side, and just do things the right way. That's all I have to say about nepotism.
I agree 100% what Bill said.
That's it? That's all?
That's it.
Okay. Okay, final question. Governor Corbett has made a number of funding cuts for school districts across the state. How do you think the cuts have affected the Uniontown Area School District? Or are there programs being cut that you would like to see brought back?
In the Uniontown School District, while some of our funding has been cut because of good management, and when I say good management, it starts from the school board and works its way down. Bill mentioned about the budget last year and how the finance committee and then the board in whole said, this is how much money you have to spend, not a dime more. And a funny thing was, the educators and the administrators stepped to the plate, and that's what they did. We have been able to change our financial situation from being way in a deficit to having the highest fund balance we have ever had. And to be able to do that, we have really worked hard. We've had teachers retire. We didn't replace them, and we've worked hard to do what we needed to do, and we continue to go forward doing the same. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay. Governor Corbett, whenever they came back and said that our funding was cut, my first impression was, well, Governor Corbett says we don't have the money in the state. If that's true or not, we're not going to get into that. But if there's not money in the state, then they say, here's how much money you're going to have. So we come back down here and like I said previously, this is how much money we have. And administrators, teachers, school board, let's all work together and let's make this work. And again, to give our children the proper education and have everything that we need to do it with. We did cut some items, maybe some things that we cut, they weren't needed at the time. And we were able to work with the money that we had, and the administrators, school board, the staff, they all got together and it works. I'm fortunate that we didn't get the money from the state. If the state has the money, they say they don't, and that, here's what you have, and this is what you have to work with, and And don't go fight about it. Just get the job done. And that's what we do. Roll your sleeves up, get the doggone job done. Don't sit there and cry that the state, oh, they're not giving us any money. That's just the way things are. Just have to toughen up. And from that, you can thank the state for not giving us money, cutting our funds, because it made us tougher and made us watch our dollar, and makes everyone else a lot happier here now, because it's just like whenever you're a child, if someone, gives you something, it's not as important as if you earned it, and I believe we're earning our money now at the Uniontown School District. Thank you.
I think Bill and I have talked about this many times because he and I work together fairly closely. Unfunded government mandates, they're the challenge. Because, we see these mandates coming from Harrisburg and the federal government that cost the taxpayers a lot of money, and they don't give you money for them. Those are the tough ones. Those are the tough ones.
Okay, that's going to conclude our questions for this part of the program. Now we'll give each of the candidates 3 minutes to make any closing statements. They can talk about anything that they wish to talk about. So,
Very good. Again, I want to thank the Herald-Standard and its editorial board for having me here today. Just to wrap up a few things, I've served on the school board now for 3.5 years. It'll be 4 years here come December, and I've really enjoyed my time on the school board. When I first came on, I didn't know what to expect, and as time went on, I found out, wow, I'm able to give something back to the community. I do have something that I can give back. It's been very good to me, and I try to give back some of my knowledge back to the community. Over the past 4 years, when we first started, I was thrown into the Finance and Personnel Committee, and boy, I didn't know anything. And I probably know just a little bit more now. But over those 4 years, I stepped in, and we had a $2 million negative fund balance. We're at 4.1 positive fund balance today, and we're able to put into a retirement fund for the teachers. We took $150,000 set aside, which isn't a large amount, but it's a start. And there was a fellow that came into one of our meetings one time, said, "You should do this," and it was probably the first year I was there, and everyone just turned their head and walked away. And same with myself, I said, "Well, we can't do it." We found a way to do it. It isn't cracking the whole nut, but it's chipping away at it. The renovation projects are done, and as a whole, I think it's really improved all three of our schools. Put $50 million plus into the city of Uniontown, which no one else is doing that. We haven't raised taxes. It gives a good spirit to the students, administrators, teachers. It's a good spirit for the community. That's the focal point of the community, is the school. And I think we're pretty well set for the next 20 plus years, hopefully. Just to wrap things up, I'd like to continue doing what I've set out to do, is give back to the community, give a good education to the students, and it has to work hand in hand. The taxpayers have to be able to afford this education, and we have to work hand in hand with the taxpayers and the students, the administrators, and the teachers. And I thank you again for your time. Thank you.
okay, go.
Thanks, Mark. I've been on the school board now a number of years, number of terms, 4 terms, and I really feel at the end of this term things are really kind of, if you may, coming together. From a standpoint of finances, we have the highest fund balance that the school district's ever had, and we got that not by accident. We got that by a board working together and really aligning staff with students as we start to have staff retire and enrollment going down. We didn't have to replace certain people. I think from a standpoint of a board, we really, and Bill helped create this, we really made the staff more accountable to what they spent, where the money went, how they stuck to their budgets, what was in their budget, what can they spend, what are the necessities, what are the needs, and what are the wants. When you're almost $2 million in the hole, you're not getting very many wants. You're worrying about the necessities, and that's pretty much it. We work with the Administrative Act 93 agreement. They're working on a total freeze. The last time we negotiated a teacher's contract, they agreed to a contract which I think helped the school district out. I'll give them credit there. So we've come a long way in having the school district as financially sound as it's ever been. I'd like to take some credit for that in the work that I've done. From the standpoint of scores, we touch base on scores a little bit, and while you can't ever be satisfied where your scores are, and you constantly have to be changing your professional development, changing your curriculum, remapping what you do. I think in terms of the demographics that we deal with, we've done, I think, a pretty good job, and continue to try to hone that and improve it so that moving target that the PSAA creates, that we're getting closer rather than further. As Bill said, we spent almost $50 million in the city of Uniontown. And we did 3 schools that I welcome anyone to go through. They are just absolutely beautiful. And not only did we do this, we did it under budget. And Bill, $1.5 million?
Yes.
We did $1.5 million under budget. So that allows us to use some of that for some other things. To do what? To improve the ability of our staff to teach our kids and do what we do. As I sit back and I reflect on a lot of things that we have done the past 4 years, it really is something that I'm excited about, and I've enjoyed working with my colleagues on the board we have right now. I think that while we certainly don't always agree, I think our ultimate goal has always been the same, and we've stuck to that. And as such, I look forward to another 4 years being able to apply the business skills that I've learned in the private sector to the work that we do on the school board, and continue to move us forward even from where we are right now. And with that, I would ask for the support of the voters and the taxpayers of the school district. Thank you.
Okay, that's going to conclude our program for today. Once again, I want to thank Mr. Rittenhouse, Mr. Gerke for coming on and agreeing to share their views with our viewers out there. And I want to thank you for watching. We'll see you later.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.